Metro. It says we're at 6 o'clock in the evening. Welcome everyone to the Board of Directors regularly scheduled meeting for May 23rd, 2024. I'd like to welcome you all here. At this point, we'll call this meeting to order, and Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Director Sailors,
Present.
Director Weber,
Present.
Director Gould,
Present.
Director Wood,
Present.
Director Rice,
Present.
Director Jones,
Here.
Director Costa,
Present.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Sheets did let me know that she was going to be absent this evening.
Sure did. Thank you very much for that. Director Rice, would you please lead us in a pledge to the flag?
I will. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. I will let those of you that are interested to watching our proceedings at a later date look at the Sac Metro agenda. All of the details relative to that are available for you to look at and then to connect. At this point, we'd like to open up the room for public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the district's jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any speaker forms?
I do not have any speaker forms, and Art will check online to see if we have any speakers.
No attendees online.
No comments.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much for that. I'll entertain a motion on consent. Before I do that, are there any questions relative to the multiple items on our consent calendar this evening?
I did receive an email from Assistant Chief Law noting that Director Gay Jones had caught 2 typos on her staff report for the contract for Community Risk Reduction Division Cost Recovery Services. And it was in the background area, and it was a correction of 2 dates. The correct dates are July 27th, 2023, with an effective date of September 1, 2023. That was in the background.
Okay.
No other changes.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Jones, since you found those, are you comfortable moving this consent agenda forward with those typographical corrections?
Mr. Chair, my pleasure. I move consent.
I'll second.
We got a first and a second on consent with the noted changes that will occur in that item. Are there any other questions? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Director Weber,
Aye.
President Gould,
Aye.
Director Wood,
Aye.
Director Rice,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Costa,
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. The consent calendar is adopted.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll now move on to presentation items. We have 2 of those this evening. The first one is about the longest title that I've seen in quite a while. It is the Other Post-Employment Benefit OPEB Actuarial Evaluation Report as of June 30th, 2023, with actuarial determined contributions for fiscal years ending June 30, 25 and 26. Certainly not long enough. We need to make a better title out of
Better than
that
I.
particular presentation item. With that, CFO O'Toole, you got the floor.
And thank you, Mr. Chair and directors, Fire Chief House, colleagues, members of the public. Dave O'Toole, Chief Financial Officer. For this item, I'll be introducing the district's chief actuary, Kathy McLeod of the actuarial firm McLeod & Watts, who analyzes the district's contributions towards other post-employment benefits, also known as OPEB, which are the benefits of retirees other than health. Covers everything else, other than pensions. So yeah, it makes more sense. So but it's mainly health. OPEBs are, the district must file a biennial accounting report on our OPEB obligations. And so biennially, we have our actuary come in and tell us what she found. And Kathy is on Zoom. So I presume we're ready to go.
Yes, should I get started?
There we go.
Very good. Good evening, Mr. Chair, directors. Thanks for giving me some time this evening to go through the report. Let me share my screen. And are you seeing that on your screen?
We are.
Perfect. Okay. I understand I should just take about 5 or 6 minutes to go through this, but if and when you have questions, please let me know. The primary purpose of this report is to review how the liability and assets have changed since the last valuation in 2021, and to prepare information for the audit and to facilitate contributions for planned funding. The benefits that we're valuing in this, as Dave indicated, are medical coverage for district retirees, specifically the portion paid by the district, which varies based on the date the person was hired, their years of PERS service, and their Medicare enrollment status. And there are some other ancillary benefits that are provided and valued, but I don't think they're worth talking about unless there's a specific question that comes up later about them. The process we follow is that we gather complete census information on the current employees and retirees, including health enrollment information. Then we confirm the eligibility requirements and benefits, as well as Medicare enrollment status, since the cost of coverage declined substantially after Medicare. We also have to gather information about the CERP trust balance and the activity, such as expenses, contributions, and earnings in that account. And then we move to analyzing the prior employee activity and what happened that we assumed would happen since the prior valuation and what actually happened. And we call that analysis plan experience that we're looking at. After we do that, then we look to the assumptions that we're using to project future costs and determine whether or not we feel like any changes would be appropriate in those assumptions. One of the most important assumptions in developing the liability is what we call the discount rate. We're not just simply adding up the cost of future benefits. We're actually discounting each future expected benefit payment back to the present with some discount rate. Since there's a time value of money, we do that in reverse and discount that. And setting that discount rate is a very important but complicated part of the process. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Gatsby specifically provides that if the plan is not being pre-funded or is being pre-funded but not materially enough to count, that the agency must use a 20-year municipal bond index in developing the liability. If the plan is being funded at or above the level that the actuary recommends, and that level is called the actuarially determined contribution. So if consistently over a 5-year period or longer, the agency is contributing at or above the rate we recommend, then we can use the trust expected rate of return over the long term as that discount rate. And that will always be the maximum discount rate that can be used. And if the contributions are less than what we're recommending, but more than nothing, or more than just the retiree benefits, then we have to solve for the discount rate somewhere in between. So the kind of important things out of this message are the higher the discount rate, the lower the liability. So you want to be in this range here, if possible, or as close to it. The district is in between, but much closer to the trust return rate than to the bond rate. And this gives a quick, you don't have to memorize any of these numbers, but this gives a quick look at how the district's contributions over the past 7 or 8 years have compared to what we've recommended and the shortfall. And this bottom line here shows the ratio, the percent of the actual contributions to the amount that we recommended, the ADC. And if you look back over the past 5 years, that average is about 91%. So that's going to color the discount rate we can use. And here's a quick look back over the last 5 years of where those bond rates have been and the trust rates have been. So bond rates started off in the mid-3s and then fell these last couple of years, as everybody knows, to some pretty low rates. And now they've rebounded quite a bit, somewhere between 3.5% and 4% per year. In the meantime, this expected trust return, and we get this information from CalPERS, which they publish, and they update every 3 or 4 years. That expected return rate has fallen from 7.25% back in 2018 down to 6.16% after this analysis. So these two things and how much the district is contributing relative to our recommended amount are what determine that discount rate. So it's been up and down a little bit, but if the result from this 2023 valuation, it's about 6%, which is pretty close to that trust rate of return. This is a real quick example just to give you a feel for what we do as actuaries behind the scenes. This is just an example of 3 hypothetical employees, all hired at age 40 and assumed to retire at 60. And so this first person just retired at 60, completed his 20 years. And for cost purposes, what we do is we allocate costs to every year that we expect someone to work. So for this retiree, we've allocated the full cost of his future benefit to all the years he's worked. There's nothing left to be allocated in the future because he has no more service to render to the district. So if we look here at our grid up here, the green represents prior service costs. So the full cost of his benefit has been fully accrued as a liability. The second person here was also hired at 40, has worked for 10 years and has 10 left to go. And the implication there is we've accumulated 10 years of prior service cost, which would be in the accrued liability to date. We're going to assign 1 year's cost to the current year of service, and the remaining are going to be assigned to future years before he retires. And the last example is a brand new employee just hired at 40, doesn't have any past service, so there's nothing in that accrued liability yet for him. We're going to assign a cost or normal cost to this current year, and then the rest will each be assigned as normal costs in each of the future years. So this gives a feel for what we do, and then we simply add up these numbers for each person to get the results. This is a quick picture of what the terms mean. There won't be a test, and I'm going to do it really quickly. This top bar here represents what I'd call the whole ball of wax. This is what we're really projecting for the very long term, the present value of all the projected benefits for current retirees and current employees that we think will retire from the district. And then we simply allocate those costs, as I illustrated here. We allocate those to past years. That would be the green here. Some of it we allocate to the current year. That would be the orange here. And the rest we're going to assign to those future years. So on the valuation date, we look at what the accumulated past service cost liabilities are for everybody in the plan. And then we stop and compare that to the assets that have been set aside toward funding that benefit. And whatever the shortfall is considered an unfunded liability. So in accounting speak, that unfunded liability is called the net OPEB liability. And that liability goes on the books in the financial statements. So the rest of the accounting story is we report that net OPEB liability, meaning the shortfall from the past service liability minus the assets, that goes on the books. Each year, though, the full amount of the change in the net OPEB liability is not recognized immediately. There's a deferred recognition of the changes in the net OPEB liability, depending on the category in which that difference falls. So the 4 categories that we have to track are assumption changes, liability experience, investment experience, meaning difference between actual, excuse me, I have a touch of laryngitis, so bear with me, please. Investment experience, difference between actual and expected earnings, and then if there are plan changes, meaning there's been a change to the benefit provided or the eligibility for those benefits. So this chart looks very briefly at how things have changed in that net OPEB liability over the past 2 years. The big changes, one big change came last year when the assets had been about almost $70 million, but a year later, despite having contributed to the trust again, the asset value actually fell substantially. So a loss in the assets actually led to an increase in the net OPEB liability a year ago. Then this year, when we gathered new data and reanalyzed the liability, the assets improved, earnings were about what we expected, and there was another contribution to the trust. So this went up about what we expected, but the liability went up quite a bit as a result of a number of things. The largest 2 increases this year were almost 12 million liability increase because the January 24 CalPERS medical premium rates were much higher than expected. And the second contributing factor was from several changes, but were from assumption changes that we made about future costs of the plan, one of which included an increase in our assumption about how future healthcare premiums would go up as well. And then last, to finish things up, I wanted to talk about plan funding. The report includes development of two different funding levels. The first is referred to as the actuarially determined contributions, which I mentioned earlier. And they are important because that's the amount that the actuary determines as appropriate to pay off both the current year's service cost each year and to systematically pay off the unfunded liability down to zero. And as I explained before, the ADCs are used to set the discount rate that we use to value the liability to be reported in the financial statements. So that's the importance of that number. The other is funding policy contributions, and those reflect the basis that the district has stated to us that it will use to contribute to the plan. And the funding policy contribution could be more or less than the ADC. In this case, the district's funding policy determines contributions that are lower than the ADCs. So just briefly, relative to the levels for funding developed in the last valuation compared to the levels determined in this valuation, the actuarially determined contribution for fiscal year end 25 is more than 5 million higher than the level determined for fiscal year end 24. And similarly, the funding policy number for fiscal year end 25 is more than 3.9 million higher than the amount determined for fiscal year end 24. So this gives an image of what I was just talking about. This focuses just on the funding policy contributions. But for fiscal year end 24, the level we developed in concert with the district input was about $16 million for fiscal year end 24. And it's comprised of the amount that the district is expected to pay in premium dollars for retirees, just a hair under 12 million. And the remainder would go to the trust, just a little bit over 4 million. And it's our understanding that that's been budgeted and will be paid for this fiscal year. Then looking ahead to next year, we can see this is what I said. The funding policy contribution is about $3.9 million higher than in this year. So that would be going up. The retiree benefit payments are about the same, but because of budget constraints, it's my understanding in discussions with Ron and Dave that the contribution to the trust will not meet the full amount of this targeted contribution for this year and is expected to be about $3.7 million lower than expected. So that's a quick overview of the report. I'm happy to take any questions about this or discussion.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for that presentation. If you want to stop sharing your screen, then I think the directors can take a look at you. And I'll just ask my colleagues, are there any questions relative to this presentation item for either CFO O'Toole or Ms. McLeod? Any questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you. I hope you get better.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're
All right.
welcome.
Take care.
CFO O'Toole, do you have any additional comments? Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to the next our next agenda item, presentation item. It is from Director Weber on the ad hoc committee relative to our workers' compensation programs. Director Weber.
Thank you, sir. My PowerPoint is almost as in-depth as we just saw. So I'm here to update us on what's happening in the ad hoc. Ad hoc is for workman's comp, and it is designed to improve the practices here at Metro Fire. So our very first meeting was a spirited meeting, to say the least. But the takeaways from that meeting was that we were focusing on the educational component for the rest of the board, which is what we're calling Work Comp 101. Unfortunately, that date keeps being moved down the road. So we spoke about it again tonight. And the other focus takeaway from the very first meeting was an educational component for the rest of the employees. Part of that is already up on Metro Fire's apps, so the employees or members can get in the apps and at least see a guidebook, and which is ever changing, but it allows them to work themselves through the process of work comp for our employees. At some point, the rest of the board will understand that as well. Second meeting, we changed some things up a little bit. We set some ground rules and some parameters, cleaned up some misunderstanding between individuals. It was a very productive meeting. We revisited the 101 component for the board, updated the consistent messaging that everybody in that room, from labor to a board member to line individuals, assistant chiefs, commanders, and then deputy chiefs as well. So we're all sending the same message when we talk about this. At the end of this meeting, the ideas that are coming out of that, with full board approval, then we may give direction to the fire chief on where we would like to go. We talked about some other projects in the second meeting and today about other agencies' models, where we can cherry pick from their models they've had successes with, and where we can implement those for the Metro way. Once again, improving work comp for our members and certainly reducing our liabilities to work comp. Ava Toole gave a presentation tonight. Within 4 months, we had Intercare on board. We've saved or decreased roughly $2 million. That's a 32% decrease in work comp, which is a giant, giant number. And then the last thing that we signed a resolution giving the chief authority, and that's what this page is. All of the greens are the automatics that Intercare now has approval to just sign off on and not go to utilization review. So all of this stuff is very, very positive. The chief will give a presentation at some point. We've got some other very exciting things that that we're looking at, not only in the ad hoc, but working with the chief. And we're moving in a very, very positive direction. And we should have some, I think, phenomenal things coming out of this and at the end of this meeting. So that is it.
All right. Thank you very much for that update. Given the challenges that we continue to have with getting this particular first educational opportunity, I'll be working with the chief and staff and our board clerk to pull the board to figure out when we can have a special meeting focus primarily or exclusively on this issue. We need to get this behind us. We've been working on it. So I will work with the chief and staff, and then our board clerk will send out a notice to all of you of potentially a couple of preferred dates to make that happen for everyone. We want to maximize the board members' attendance because it's really intended to help educate us and bring us up to speed on the work that's going on around this topic. So please look at your emails and respond as quickly as you can. I would prefer this not move much beyond the next couple of weeks before we have a new date set and we can go. There's a lot of other behind the scenes logistics that go into play. And every time we kick this can down the road, it makes a lot of people pretty frustrated. So I'll work with the chief and get back to all of you, but thank you, Director Weber, and your entire ad hoc committee for the work that they're doing. They will also be coming to us as they feel that additional presentations are necessary to keep the entire board in the loop, as it were. And I know that they're planning also for a fairly good presentation at the end of the year before we all go our different places. That will kind of wrap up the year's efforts and work. So again, thank you for your leadership in making this work. And thanks to all of the folks from the various constituency groups, as it were, within our department to have a say in how this works. And so I want to thank you for that, Director.
Jack-
Go ahead.
Could I ask
Mhm.
if I missed anything, if Director Saylor
Absolutely.
had anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered everything that
Very good.
we're working on.
Director Weber, did you guys discuss the last meeting in June as a possibility for the 101?
We discussed the 13th and
Yeah,
the
27.
27th.
that's the 27th, right?
And I said that I would work with you on
Okay.
that. And certainly with President Gould on if that date works, if that's a solid date.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to also get this done as soon as possible.
okay.
If there are other pending items that we need to discuss in there.
So what I'll probably do is loop Director Weber and the chief and I in on that conversation, and then we'll let you know. It's my preference that we do it at the end of one of these regularly scheduled
Yeah.
meetings, which is what been our plan since day one. And we may have to, just for all of you out there that have some desires to agendize things, no pun intended, but we've got to be able to insert this
Yeah.
and not keep putting out some fires. And this has got to go a little higher on the pecking order, as it were, to get this behind us. Because this is 101, then we're going to have 102, and by the end of it, I hope you
Yeah.
all are graduate students. And you have a really
Like,
good working
yeah.
idea of how workers' comp and other issues affect this district. I am so tickled to hear that we're already seeing some very positive changes, not just financially, but that probably then relates back to families and most importantly, our men and women who are in that vicious loop of workers' comp. And so kudos to all of those changes, but I'll work with the
Mhm.
appropriate folks to get a date set, and then it will not be able to be bumped again. Okay? It will happen that day, period. Make sense? Questions from my colleagues? Go ahead, Jay.
Thank you, President Gould. A quick particular question about the chart that was just presented to us. Under this orange, gold, yellow, it says recommend not subject to UR. Is that going to be part of what we discuss, and is it the board in charge of deciding what the recommended adds or changes are?
So this sheet goes in line with the resolution that was signed by the board for the fire chief to authorize pre-approvals. So the TPA has pre-authorization. And for full transparency, and I think Director Weber was going to mention this, but one of the other things I just added to this 2 weeks ago was hernias. So hernias now don't need to come for any other authorizations. They go right through the TPA and get pre-approved. So that's what this list talks about. So that list will continually be expanded. We'll take recommendations, obviously, from what I'm seeing as far as our members being hurt, injured, or any stumbling blocks. But we'll also take recommendations from the ad hoc committee, and that's the intent of that committee. So you'll see this continue. This will be a living document, I can imagine, and it will grow.
Okay, so no, it sounds great. So just to be clear, under the recommended added and changes, those have already occurred. Excellent. Thank you.
Correct. And some of them you'll see that if you take the top one on the right-hand side under physical medicine, initial 12 visits, that's been increased to 24 because we're seeing improvement for return to work improvements by more than 12 visits. So it made sense from a fiscal responsibility, but more importantly, from a mental capacity of getting the employee back to work. So we increased those visits.
Director Jones, is that you good?
Oh, I'm very good. I'm very glad to see that these are implemented and going, both from a policy viewpoint as a director and as a retired firefighter. I'm very glad to see all this.
Yeah, great. That's excellent. Director Wood?
Thank you, President Gould. I just want to publicly thank you, Director Weber, for the laboring oar you've taken on this. It's a big lift, but it's going to make the lives of our men and women a lot better. So thank you for all your work.
Anyone else? Director Rice, did I see that you had a hand up? Okay. All right. Then anything else? Robert, Cindy, thank you very much for that presentation. And let's move on to action items. We have an adopt resolution equipment leasing financing contract for fiscal year 23-24. CFO O'Toole, you're up.
Good evening, Chair, Directors, Fire Chief, and members of the public and colleagues. For this action item, I seek your approval for a lease financing contract for capital expenditures budgeted in the current fiscal year. The district's fiscal year 23-24 mid-year budget finance for vehicles and equipment purchases over a 5-year period was included in the budget. Financing for those items is normally secured near the end of the fiscal year when the funds are actually needed. When the district solicited financing offers, we received 7 responses, and which is a typical response level for our financings. After reviewing 7 proposals, staff recommends that the district enter into an equipment lease with Bank of America based on their providing all the requested information with the lowest overall cost and terms acceptable to the district. The estimated total equipment cost to be financed is $2,444,233. If you concur, the apparatus and equipment already approved in the budget will be added to the master lease schedule with an associated payment schedule over the next 5 years. The interest rate for the proposed financing is 4.32%. Staff recommends adopting the resolution to authorize the fire chief and chief financial officer to enter into an equipment lease with Bank of America Capital Corp. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for CFO O'Toole relative to this action item? Hearing none, let's go ahead and I'll entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I so move staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. That's
Second.
first. Second. And we got a second. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Director Sailors,
Aye.
Director Weber,
Aye.
President Gould,
Aye.
Director Wood.
Aye.
Director Rice,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Costa,
Aye.
Director Clark. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that approval. We'll move on to our reports. The only report I want to make you aware of is I have asked staff and Council Lavra and others to look into the compensation history of Board of Directors members under some direction and counsel from our council, not to be duplicative, but we are now going to be doing a kind of a survey of the region to determine how other governmental agencies and groups compensate their directors. I will tell you, irony of this is the last time that this was taken as a policy and then moved through as a resolution, it was in 2002. So I think the folks out there in the community who think that sometimes politicians are all about just, putting money in their pocket and calling it good. It's been more than 2 decades since this particular body has seen any kind of adjustment and I think our gas has gone up by, I don't know, $40 or something a gallon. So the reality is that I think in order for us to be fair, equitable, and to take a good look at this, so we don't run into situations where community members are not willing to serve because it provides a massive deficit to their home pockets. I think we've got to be realistic on what that is. We're not going to make any actions until we have the data in, and then we'll have an open discussion in this forum to look at that and make some recommendations. And so I just wanted to make you all aware that we're doing that work. The chief and staff are working on those comparables so that we can come back and inform this group. Make sense? Any questions about that? Okay, thank you very much. That ends my report. We'll move to Fire Chief's report. Chief House.
Good evening, directors, colleagues, members of the public. To your point, we assigned that to Marty as the point on that survey to find out what other organizations are doing. She'll be working with additional staff to have that fed back to you. So continuing with our health and awareness and cancer discussion, about a month and a half ago, I reported to you all that we are co-hosting with the Firefighter Cancer Support Network and collaborated with 522 on this and utilizing some of the $300,000 contracted funds to really supplement just hotel and accommodations for travel for the person that came up to do this as the lead, because we asked for a pretty heavy load from them. Typically it's 1 or 2 meetings for an organization. We asked for, I believe, 8. We've done 4 of those. We're doing 4 more. We've had 224 of our members show up to this already halfway through. They're going over stuff like how to minimize off-duty exposure, how to prevent, handle fire ground exposures itself, station setup and cleaning practices, understanding the role of wellness and cancer prevention, and how to receive support for those dealing with cancer. The feedback so far has been overwhelmingly good. Some questions, we still have some work to do. But we're doing a lot of things right now, and we're obviously taking a proactive approach to this, and it's a priority for all of us in the room. So that's good news. And in addition to that, we have established a Metro Fire Cancer Task Force that was assigned to Battalion Chief Tony Peck. He's working directly for me out of the office of the fire chief. He's been introducing that after every session. And really what that is that we're looking at everything that we're doing currently and what we're not doing, but we're going to get that underneath one umbrella to increase conversation, cross-pollination, but also fiduciary responsibilities to ensure we're not doing repeated items, which turns into another report on May 15th through the 16th. Battalion Chief Matt Cole, Captain Pete Botava, Captain Brett Randall, and I toured once again an additional wellness center or 2 to find out what we're doing, what we can do for improvements, and areas that we have gaps. And it was a very productive whirlwind time. I think we did it less than 24 hours to go visit wellness centers at Denver Fire and South Metro Fire. And we all know South Metro Fire is probably well, I call them our little sister agency because they're very similar to what we do as a special district. We saw two extremely different models, but we picked up very valuable. And I would say, speaking with 522, we have some actionable stuff specifically with what South Metro was doing that we can interject pretty fast. So that's gonna work with that task force committee and obviously the ad hoc committee and everything else we're doing to figure out how we can just be better with wellness. So that proactive approach is going to continue. We have some other places we want to go visit, and those meetings and discussions face to face have been very rewarding and successful. So more to come on that as we increase our wellness and cancer and workers' comp for all of our members and looking out at the district liabilities and fiduciary responsibility at the same time. And then the last thing I have for tonight is one of the things I love doing that I said I was committed to do, and we're going to continue with introductions of one employee, a brand new employee for us. So I'd like to introduce and welcome Robin Anderson up to the podium, please. And Robin was hired for the position of grant specialist. So I'm sure you're eager to hear her background. I met Robin day one. We had a good conversation, had some smiles, and I look forward to her experience and bringing that experience to where we can navigate new grants that are vitally important for our organization as we go forward. So she was hired on May 15th in the finance division and grant specialist. So welcome and thank you, Robin.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Robin Anderson, the grant specialist that's replacing Marie Jones. I bring a wealth of grant knowledge and information as well as accounting information and experience to the Sac Metro Fire District. My last 10 years, I was with the California Department of Justice, managing grants and managing and administering grants. Roughly about 30 million a year. And prior to that, I was with the City of West Sacramento, and there I did accounting for 6 years. So I have a lot of experience and expertise to bring to the Sac Metro Fire District. I'm very excited to be here. I'm so happy I was chosen. It's a great organization so far. I've been here a little over a week, but from what I've seen, it's like no other. I've never experienced this. I've worked for county, city, and state, and now here, and the order and respect that I see here is just amazing. I really love it.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate it. And welcome to Metro Fire.
That's really nice to hear. Chief, can I ask you one question? You mentioned this cancer task force that you're putting together. Could I request that you think about putting on that task force a spouse, someone that has gone through the process of cancer treatment in their family, not themselves, but their spouse or their partner or whatever? I think that perspective is one that we need to constantly be aware of, is what are the things we're doing and the impacts they're having on families, right? And so if you could, if it's appropriate, we can find someone. I'd love to see that task force include somebody that has that perspective. I know it's delicate. I get all of that, but I think if we had that person's voice in the room, it would resonate to a point where we might look back and go, yeah, that's a stupid policy, right? Or that's not something that is beneficial to a family member. So if you could just see if that could happen, I'd very much appreciate it.
Great idea. And absolutely.
Okay, thank you for
And
that.
Chief Peck is wide open to having everybody.
Yeah,
And just like these current sessions, it was firefighter centric, but it was opened up to all of our members.
Excellent.
And one last thing, if I can just
Oh, yeah.
share one last thing for the public reminder, is that the district offices will be closed this Monday, the 27th, in respect to Memorial Day. So we will be closed.
Yeah,
I'll be done with my report and turn it over for any questions. So
I was just
thank you.
going to say, any questions for the chief relative to what he's shared with us this evening? Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's move on now. By my count, I don't see Chief Mitchell. Now, my glasses might Is there somebody? Okay,
Pre-
there we go.
Keely's going to report
Yeah.
out for Chief Mitchell.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Chief, how are you tonight?
Great.
Thank you
Gould,
very
thank
much.
you. President Gould, members of the board, Chief House, friends and colleagues. For tonight's board ops presentation, I'm going to be presenting the Shift Commander Spotlight. My name is Kylie Keeley. I'm the B Shift Commander. And I get the honor to have the operational oversight on B Shift, the day-to-day operations. Last week, Battalion 13, Chief Vestal, Jason Vestal, who's off today, otherwise he would be here helping me out with this presentation. He put together a really complex coordinated drill for his entire battalion that occurred on one day, Friday. So it was a two-part drill. He coordinated with state parks. It was wildland based because we're coming into wildland season, and it's always good to brush off those cobwebs that we don't really effectively use the tasks and tactics and strategies in wildland on our over the winter. So he was able to bring his entire battalion in 2 phases. He coordinated with the parks. He obtained multiple tech channels. He coordinated with CERT. CERT was out there to help us out. The PIO was out there. We even got help from Jake Whalen, who is our GIS analyst. He produced some really high quality maps. So it was kind of an all encompassing drill that really was effective in getting us prepared to step into wildland season this year. So what occurred was multiple divisions were created with an expanding ICS organizational chart during the drill. They had multiple TAC channels to add complexity. We had the helicopter over the top, which was providing situational awareness. And we also have an expanding technology in the command post. We're using tablet command, and I'll present that some to you in the future with an addition of something called Fire Mapper, where the helicopter can actually draw on our maps, and it shows real time onto our maps in the ICP where the fire is right now. They can take photographs from the air, and it shows up on our maps. So everybody that has tablet command, which is pretty much all of our line personnel on their phones or their tablets, can access what the helicopter is seeing right now. So it was a really good drill. Jason did a great job coordinating, like I said, and to illustrate what the impact that it had for the boots on the ground, I asked Engine 32, Captain Manfredi, to come with his crew, and he's going to come up and introduce his crew, and they're going to speak to what kind of impact this kind of coordinated drill has to prepare them to be effective in the wildland for this coming fire season.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, board. I'm Captain Ryan Manfredi. I've been in front of you before. And in planning this, we've worked on some succession planning, and we have Engineer Levesque who's planning to take the promotional test. So Chief Vestal had him assist him, and so I'm having him discuss this for you guys.
Nicely done, Captain. Nicely done.
Thank you, board. Thank you, Chief House, and everybody else here. Having this drill was truly beneficial to not everybody that took place in the drill, but to the community that we protect. It took a lot of coordination on multiple fronts, getting this together with multiple different agencies and getting the strategies and tactics to be aligned with everybody on the drill is huge for not only us, but everybody in the community. So another thing that was incredibly successful was getting our crews out there, getting us refamiliarized with not only our equipment, our engines, our tools of other agencies too, what they use was huge for us, just in case we needed to use something off their engine or they needed to use something off ours. We appreciate everybody that was involved with it. The crews got a lot out of it, and we appreciate your guys' continued support in larger drills that we put on. We do a lot of smaller in-company drills, but doing one of this magnitude and with your guys' support was very beneficial, and we thank you very much for that. I don't have anything else. That's back to you.
So for what's next, we have some vegetation management burns that are coming up. And for that, Battalion Chief Chris Vestal is going to come up and speak to that.
All right, President Gould, members of the board, Fire Chief House, the audience, both here and virtually. Thank you for giving me some time to describe some of the things that I know several of you have heard in the past. And also some changes that we're making this year to hopefully better, not just us here at Metro, but also with our partners. And I think one of the things that really drives home some of the messages, earlier today, we had a all hands meeting, our annual meeting for the Sacramento Regional IMT. And as we go through these processes of planning these burns, not just from how we're going to do it on the day of, but how we coordinate with our other agencies and all the other partners, the landowners, and all the other processes that have to take place to make these successful. Things from making sure that we're meeting the objectives of whoever owns the land so that we can properly reduce the hazards that they have, as well as remove any of their noxious species of some of their vegetation that they want removed. And of course, with the Air Quality District who regulates all of this. And if we mess that up, we're going to be prevented from burning in the future. So starting back in 2011 with our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and working with some of the other agencies, I know Director Jones will remember some of this with the American River Parkway Foundation, state parks, county parks, a lot of things that Chief Keeley already mentioned. We coordinate with everybody to make sure that they're done correctly, along with BC Wilborn with the community notifications, Special Ops BC, Grant Russell, and a lot of other coordination with the shift commanders to make sure we get the right units, that we do it on days that are not impactful to the district, that we're not impacting schools and other population centers, to make sure that everything's safe, everything's done right, and we portray the right image that we want for our fire district. This year, we're going to invite some of our regional partners. So with Chief Lozano's assistance, we've attended a few of the regional training officers meetings. We're working with county airports through Chief Green in preparation for a hazard reduction burn in advance of the air show this year, which is exciting. Something we've done before, but we've really formalized that process. And when I talked about the Air Quality District, Chief House will remember how hard it was in years past to get a proper burn permit approved. And we streamlined it, so we cut out some of the middle agencies like Sacramento County Agriculture, who really had nothing other than an administrative role, and they didn't understand what we did. So now we work directly with the Air Quality District, who understands what we do better. And we're able to put these on, get them done a lot faster, and make sure that we have the proper training, we meet our objectives, whether that's firing operations or actual fire suppression, oftentimes for some of our new people, which we might have this year with the recent academy graduation. So thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions, but thank you.
Any questions?
Go ahead.
No, go.
Thank you. Just a quick question on where we're targeting.
So this will be, our primary burns this year will be out off of Eagles Nest near the Mather Golf Course. We might also have some other opportunities later on the American River Parkway, but they haven't mapped those yet. Some of those right now have some nesting birds, so they won't be available till late summer, early fall.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I know Chief Vestal's done excellent work in this area over many, many years. And just to reconfirm that we do reach out to all stakeholders involved. And I'm sure the county regional parks, Sacramento County Regional Parks, is a huge stakeholder in this. And I know that they are very attentive to working with Metro Fire. Just wanted to give a shout out to Regional Parks as well as Metro Fire on this issue. That's in particular to the American River Parkway.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the area off of Eagles Nest, that's actually also county parks. However, they have a preserve manager, which is the Center for Natural Lands Management. So they work with county parks. It's county parks land. They own it. They actually own the permit. We work with them to make that happen. And Chief Wilborn and his team has already been in contact with the county PIO staff to make sure we get all those notifications to the right people at the right time. And it's a process. We could get canceled on any particular day. So we give a time period, which this year is going to be about June 1st through about June 15th. With the exception of the airport, that's going to be June 2nd. So we want to give everybody enough heads up. We use Nextdoor, we use our social media or traditional media to make sure everybody's aware of it and they don't think there's an actual incident or any actual hazard occurring.
No, I very much appreciate that. And if you could just shoot some little text or email to us directors so that we know what is happening, that would be very beneficial to us in response to our constituents' questions.
Certainly.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Welcome.
Chief Kingley, if you'll stay up there for a second. You got more?
Yes, I wanted to close with,
Sure.
I know I highlighted B13 B shift. This happens across the battalions, across the shifts on almost definitely a weekly basis where there are more complex drills that are coordinated by the crews, whether they're doing multi-company drills or the battalions where they're doing a larger, more complex training. And so this is just going to help us be prepared as we step into this next wildland fire season.
Thank you for that. Any questions for this chief? I have a couple of for you, if you don't mind.
Yes, of course.
I love to hear all this work and time and effort and energy that goes into these drills. Now, I heard you said that our PIO was present. Was that correct? Did I hear that correct? Were you at this big event that just was articulated? So my question is, what are we doing as an organization to capture institutional knowledge? Do these events have a playbook that's developed by the staff? My point is if we can capture that, not only in writing, but with video and those kind of things, we can archive that for maybe a battalion chief or someone down the road in 5 years. They can just open up the playbook and it reduces potentially the amount of work and creativity. I want it to still be there, but if I could open up a book and said, this is what this drill looked like, and here's all the checkoffs, we're not having to recreate it from ground zero because we got 15 of those playbooks and we go, well, this one looks like a good idea to do for training in this division. Because I hear all of this work and I just wonder, is it a one and done? Or are we capturing it some way where
No.
it's institutionalized? That's my question for you.
I think the institutionalization comes from the repetition that we do. We don't memorialize a single training. Training, I'm sure, does on their end where they're very complex. Like we just did the commercial fire training for the entire district.
All right.
That is definitely a memorialized. There's a PowerPoint. There was learning objectives. All of that. The things that I'm speaking to tonight are more ground level refreshers on tactics and task level so that we can get the hose out into our hands. We can climb hills. We can do progressive hose lays. We can coordinate drops from the helicopter, all that type of stuff. That needs to be done consistently over the course of a career. And they chose Sailor Bar for this location. We like to choose different locations to provide that complexity and maybe make people that are unfamiliar with the geographical area in our district more familiar with the challenges that would present, whether it's changes in fuel elevation, obstructions, that type of thing.
Okay. Well,
The
and I guess-
PIO did produce a release and that went out on social media, just to make the public aware of
Yeah.
things that Metro Fire is doing and engaged in on a
Okay.
day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and that was my second. What are we doing to inform the community of all the hard work that you're all doing? When they don't see smoke, they wonder,
Yeah.
what are y'all doing? And I think the more of all this hard work that you're all doing can be memorialized in that way. I think it's a really good thing for our constituents because unless they see fire or car accidents, they wonder. And if we can show them that when we're not running 8,000 calls an hour, we are doing a bunch of training and work. So thank you for that, Chief. Appreciate
you.
it. Bob, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a thought. The mapping you spoke of with the helicopter, is that geographically for Metro Fire only, or can we use that throughout the state? Such a, we're called for.
I believe we could use it statewide, but you have to have a membership with Tablet Command in order to access it.
Mhm.
So regionally, the 4 large agencies in Sac County have all gone together and we all participate in Tablet Command. And I would love to do a presentation for you in the future, just so you know exactly what I'm talking about when I mention it, because it provides a ton of accountability, direct intel based on divisions that are able to go forward and take pictures, whether it's from the helicopter or a forward division. So timelines, resources that are assigned on the scene, all that type of stuff. And it's way better than what we all came up with was a steno pad. And if it's raining and you used your whiteboard and somebody came up and your ICS org chart was gone. So that is definitely memorialized, and I'll show you all the background on how we can use that for our records management keeping and and how that's expanding in everyday use.
I would certainly be interested in that. Thank you.
So Chief, let's do this. Have you talk to Chief House and let's figure out a time after Workers' Comp 101 that we can slip that in. Because I think it's a really wonderful technology that is really at the cutting edge of what you all do every day.
It is.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Appreciate that. Any other things? Chief, you good?
Yeah, real quick.
Well,
Great.
this chief. Okay, go.
Great job, Chief Keely, and Chief Vestal and your crews. He's being extremely humble, and I can feel it with Chief Rice over there as a former incident commander. We wish we would have had this technology back in the day. And let's not kid ourselves about, we blend in a lot of times about structure fires, right? But we lose, the fire service loses a lot of people in smoke and vegetation fires. This is going to save lives. I've already heard it back from people that participated in the drill about the amazing point of how we can navigate access, how we can determine and message to all of our members from the incident command post. So all of our division heads and all of our crews know where the actual fire started, the heel, where our black areas are, where our safe spots are, where our next drop would be, where our threats are, where our resources should be going, how we establish all of our divisions. So for a command and control, this is like cutting edge, and Chief Keely took the reins by this and brought this to our district. So this is going to save lives, but it's going to save properties. It's going to decrease when we talk about workers' comp and the health and welfare, the psychological effects of getting lost. We have heard stories, and I know we've shared this before I was in this position to the board. We've lost some crews in smoke conditions where our helicopter has paid off in dividends to do water drops. This is just going to increase that capability to get them out of those hazardous conditions faster, but also if they're in those conditions, to get additional resources to help them to get out of those hazardous areas, but also to navigate where the helicopter should be dropping next. So it's a win-win all the way around at a very cheap price. So thank you. Great job.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, remember, after Workers' Comp 101. Ryan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Operational. Kylie, does that program have the ability to map the hottest spots on the fire line for you so that you can concentrate resources
It does
like
not.
that? It's not there yet?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what we would use the helicopter for direct eyes on the ground. There are FIRIS flights that can import into those maps, but that's a coordinated thing. Usually happens overnight on really large multi-thousand acre vegetation fires.
Well, with you at the leadership level, I believe all of those creative ideas, Brian, are going to become part of the standard. I think we're using a tool and you'll give feedback to the developers of, we need this capability, and then you'll work with them to make it happen. That's a great idea. But I have no doubt with your leadership, it's going to happen,
Thank you,
right?
Jeff. Thank you, President.
And it's absolutely a next. You've seen it at the conferences, Chief Rice and Director Rice today. We've seen it, but it's one of those technologies we want to get right
Yeah.
first, because it could be very expensive if we don't get it right. And everybody and their brother wants to sell it right now. The other side of that component is using our UAVs, because they do it now. And we've used that sometimes. It's a delicate balance because we can't have UAVs up with our helicopter at the same time. But we've had our UAVs in short order do that on my previous fires. The technology is there. We just want to get it right because we don't want to waste money on technologies. We all know it's going to come and go very quickly. So
And just once again, tell me how bright it was to have a helicopter program. Okay, let's move on. Thank you,
Brilliant.
Chief. Appreciate it. Let's move on. I have it on good notice that we do not have an administrative report this evening. No changes there. I've got it in big bold letters that we also don't have a support services report this evening. So we'll move on to our local firefighters, local 522 report. And I do not see Captain Sean, so I'm assuming, yes, he has been replaced for tonight.
Good evening, Board, Chief House, everybody else in attendance. Mike Gildone, Local 522 Director, also firefighter on Truck 106 on C shift. VP Scard sends his regards. He's at a event for Patrick Kennedy, one of our Board of Supervisors tonight. So I'm taking baby steps in my ability to enjoy public speaking. So I volunteered this time instead of being
Wow.
told to do it.
That's great.
So it's been very busy, as it usually is with us. I'll kind of go from the last couple weeks of what we've been doing. The first thing that on the agenda was the San Diego wellness visit that most of our e-board and Chief Cole went down to see how they do their workers' comp, their cancer treatment, their all of the mental health, their comp, all of that stuff. And they came back with glowing reviews and really wanted to try to find a way to emulate some of that. I believe Director Weber already spoke about some of those ideas coming out of that visit being brought into the meeting tonight. And so that was a great visit. The next item we went to is the CPF convention, which one of your peers led, and we did a lot of good business there, kind of helping direct the way the state local or state union body entity will be conducting itself with its business and what it's doing and those actions that they're going to take. After that, I went to the academy twice last week to get our new academy graduates oriented to the local. And then also as the co-staffing chair, I went and spoke to them about staffing, what that looks like as far as mandatories and overtime and how they work that system and their responsibility and roles within our service delivery. Last week after I went to that, we went to the State Assembly to sit in on a resolution that was proposed by one of our assembly members and was co-sponsored by CPF, bringing awareness to firefighter suicide. There is a resolution to make a firefighter suicide awareness week in the state. And that was resoundingly and overwhelmingly supported on the floor. I can say that I've never been in the State Assembly before. It's very interesting. There's a lot of talking going on while other people are presenting. It seemed kind of rude, but I will say when the firefighter resolution was brought forward, the floor quieted down. 3 people spoke on it instead of 1, and almost everybody that voted, almost everybody voted for the affirmative for the resolution. So that was a really neat experience, and I think it's interesting. It was really neat to see how much support that we have out there with the assembly. The next item was the visit to Denver and South Metro that Chief House attended. Again, a lot of really good material came from that. I think, again, Director Weber heard about that as well. It just seems to be there are steps that we can take to just be a lot more effective in what we're doing with all of those things. Yesterday, we had a labor management meeting with the e-board and a lot of the executive staff. That went very well. There was good discussion there. Not a lot of to report out of it. And the last thing that I want to say is I always make sure that we thank you for your support. And we have a great reason to do that as since our last board meeting, Squad 102 went into service. And I will say that without your support, I don't believe that would have happened. And early reports out of 109 and 103, the neighboring companies that are always very, very busy, is that Squad 102 is making a big difference already. So we're excited about that. We do believe there's room for maybe a different type of first responder there in the future, but we do believe that the need is beginning to be met there. And that's, it's huge for us. I can't say how much 109 and 103 is grateful. And to be honest with you, your community members in that area are better served, certainly. So I want to say thank you for that. And if there are no questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions? Thank you, sir, for your report. Appreciate that. We'll move on now to committee and delegate reports. The executive committee, I just want to make my colleagues aware of the fact that some of the issues we're dealing with and decisions that need to be made may come to the executive committee, and we'll agendize that appropriately and continue to move forward in that regard. Com Center JPA, Chief Green, you're up.
Thank you, President Gould. Directors, Chief House, esteemed colleagues, and the public. Chris Green, Assistant Chief in the Operations Branch and board member for the Communication Center JPA. I have an update for you on a project that's been going on for the past year in the infrastructure. But I want to take you back to my report in January when we talked about some statistics. So we talked about the phone calls. The phone rang about 450,000 times last year at the comm center. If you look back 24 years ago at the inception of Metro Fire, that call volume was about half. As our agency has grown to accommodate the increased call volume within our jurisdiction, so has the needs of the comm center. The problem is there are 4 concrete walls, do not expand. So they have been squished over the years, with additional personnel and additional needs. Just a few years ago, one of the stopgap moves was to move the administrative office with the executive staff about a mile down the road into a lease space. That was a temporary move that at the time was needed. It's worked out okay, but one of the issues that rose through a joint strategic plan put together between the labor and management was having the leadership physically separated from the actual floor of the dispatchers was not cohesive in an environment. So an opportunity arose within the last year to lease office space in the building next door to the comm center through Local 340 IBEW. So that lease has been struck. It's a great relationship between our comm center and the local 340. It's a win for both sides. We just approved the May 14th board meeting, an expenditure of just around $32,000 for a tenant improvement, which is actually going to almost triple the size of the administrative and executive offices right now. That will be right next door to the comm center, shared parking lot that's fenced off. And it'll also include an enhanced break room that's greatly needed, physical fitness equipment and so forth. And really, I think, give the center an opportunity to take the next steps forward in the 5, 10, 15 years as we move through there. So that's my report. More than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Any questions for Chief Green relative to the comm center? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll now move on to Finance and Audit Committee. Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Audit Committee met tonight. And my overall sense that I want to share with everyone is that there's been a lot of very good projections and budget planning, really not just for this next fiscal year, but for also the next 4 to 5 years. And we don't need to go into all the details of the mid-year budget review, preliminary budget. We're going to hear that as a full board. So, but I did want to highlight this idea of looking ahead and planning ahead. For example, we have the expiration of SAFER grants. We're looking forward to 2 academies. That's going to increase some costs in some of the cost lines. However, we can see and we know how important that is, and we need to get it. We are getting ahead and planning for that stuff. We also have a 14% increase in CalPERS and pension contributions. And all these projections that the finance department division is having to work on includes keep an eye on the projection for inflation, interest rates, and property tax revenue, and the trends that we see on this. So please, we need to be able to pay attention to all these factors, but the overall sense is that the finance division is working proactively and looking ahead many years, trying to project and anticipate revenues and expenditures. So I wanted to thank CFO O'Toole for his presentation, and we will all enjoy that at our next board meeting when we have the budget presentation. Our next meeting, June 27th, 5:30 in these chambers. Mr. Chair.
Ma'am, Director Costa.
Thank you. No report. Our next meeting is June 13th.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll now move on to board members' questions and comments. I'll start on my right, Director Saylor.
Thank you, President Gould. Good evening. I want to start off with a big thank you to Engine 111 B Shift. Last weekend, Rio Linda had their farm and tractor days, and Engine 111 was invited, and they took it upon themselves to make sure that old Betsy, Rio Linda's first fire engine, made it over to farm and tractor days. And to do that, they had to get a trailer. They got her started and they got her driven up onto the trailer and found a pickup truck and drove her over to farm and tractor days at the Dry Creek Ranch. So a big thank you out to Engine 111 B Shift for getting old Betsy over so the community could enjoy seeing her, because Terry Harms is still too ill to get out of the house. And so, but Engine 111 took care of her and got her there. So thank you, Captain Henderson and Engineer Chin and the firefighters and medics at 111 for getting old Betsy out. My next topic I'd like to bring up is I'd like the executive committee to consider that my district borders Placer County. And we very often go into Placer County and put out a lot of their fires up there. And so I would like to task you with doing a unit history utilization on every fire and medical aid that we go on in Placer County, whether they were dispatched or whether our crews self-dispatch up there. Because we don't have any mutual aid or automatic aid agreements with any of the agencies up there. And we spend quite a bit of time up in Placer County putting a lot of grass fires out and sometimes structure fires. And we do have 1 square mile in Placer County. That is our district. And there's a gate on Locust Road that prohibits our crews from driving straight up Locust Road into our area. I would also like to start working on getting that gate removed so we can get into our district. So since wildland season has begun, I'd like us to start keeping track of how many units, how many fires, how much time we spend putting out fires, not just in our area of Placer County, but throughout the Dry Creek area in Placer County and in Roseville and in West Placer. So that at the end of wildland fire season, we can say, this is what Placer County cost us in fighting their fires and doing first aids in their district.
Okay, I'm taking those notes and assuming you had, did you say tractor and what days?
Farm and tractor days.
There's your fence issue. All right,
Okay.
anything else?
Well, yeah, people dump their garbage around the gate, and so the firefighters don't even try to go up Locust Road anymore because there's usually so much garbage. And people have just driven right through the gate, and Placer County now has placed this very substantial gate that even a tractor, I don't think, can take down.
Oh, there's a tractor big enough. You just have to find it. Chief, did we get that? We kind of get an idea of what the Director Shaler's asking for us to look into. I think we have plenty of data tools that will give us exactly what place. Maybe we'll fly over it with the helicopter and get some.
And we can push the dozer up there.
Yeah, we can. Gate's not a problem. All right, thank you, Director Sailors. Director Weber?
I do not have any comments, but thank you.
Okay, Director Costa?
No comments. Thank you.
Director Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Comedy Central's looking for you. I'd like to give a quick shout out to several of our divisions. As everyone who sits up here knows, there's often community issues and individual constituent issues that come up. And I would like to thank the Community Risk Reduction Division in responding to some community questions, and the same with EMS for constituent concerns, and also for the Finance Division for always being readily available to discuss any matters that come up in terms of finance, in regards to our Finance and Audit Committee. So thank you. A shout out to everyone on staff who is readily available to assist me in helping me do my job. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jones. Director Rice?
Just real quick, I wanted to thank firefighter Derek Sheets, the drill master and the drill cadre for the last 2 academies. He invited me to be the MC or masters of ceremony. Enjoyed that very, very much. And congratulations to the latest graduating class, and just honored to be asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Director Clark?
No comment, Mr. Chair.
Director Wood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got 2 things. I just want to say thank you to Engine 61. Today they went out and it's community service at a preschool in Rancho Cordova. And the word I got back, all the kids there were just thrilled with what they did. And so I want to publicly thank Engine 61, Captain Curry, Engineer Walker, firefighters Greenfield and Dargan. And if I mispronounced that name, I'm sorry. But thank you for your work and thank you for what you did for the kids. Lastly, just second last, I just want to remind everyone, luau on the Lakes for the Burn Institute is June 29th, a month from now. It'll be over at Hagan Oaks Park, ffburn.org. You can get your tickets. I expect to see everybody there. So look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Woods. Finally, I just want to thank all of the presentations tonight. They were wonderful and they gave us a lot of good insight of what's happening in this organization. I remember fondly years ago, a fire chief that eventually came to work here, but was an assistant chief at this organization who started the economic development division of our organization. And it has morphed into something that is a critical element of what we do in the fire service. So our newest employee that was introduced tonight, you're standing on the shoulders of significant work that's been done over decades that started. And it sounds like you're the ideal candidate to be in that position with all of your years of experience. So welcome aboard. Know that we love to get feedback from our economic development and all of the folks that are in that group. They're wonderful people. And so welcome aboard again. It's wonderful to have you and your background. Finally, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was a month or two, we went to Washington, D.C. and we had Chief Mitchell present in a wildland fire forest kind of deal. And it scared the living bejeebies out of me because of what those fires mean to our organization. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as you go out there this season and start working in these horrific environments when it comes to air quality and those kind of things, be careful. What they told us just shook me to the core as far as what happens in California wildfires. There's no other state that has these kinds of situations, and they're unbelievably problematic for our men and women. I made a comment there that shocked those folks because they were thinking about, I don't know, two-headed owls and all that kind of good stuff. And I said, stop thinking about the owls and focus on our firefighters who are placed in harm's way during those fires. It's atrocious what happens. And there may come a day where we stand back and watch it go because we're just simply not going to put our men and women in harm's way. Like when I see air quality at 900, that's just not acceptable to me that our men and women be exposed to that. So I wish you the best. I hope that you're absolutely safe every moment while you go into this fire season, which I really think we should just stop saying it starts and it stops. How about if it just continues until we actually mitigate it correctly in this state? Because it's kind of silly to say that it stops. I don't know that it really does. And we'll work on the gate at Rio Linda, Director Sailors. We'll figure that one out. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we're going to go into closed session this evening. I hope that all of you have a wonderful evening and a great holiday as we remember some of the most important people in our community. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We come back into open session. We'd like our attorney, Mr. Lavra, if you'll report out.
Yes, thank you, President Gould. The board met in closed session under the closed session agenda item concerning the workers' compensation matter related to Anthony Benalicia. No reportable action was taken by the board.
Thank you very much. Just want to make my colleagues aware the next regularly scheduled board meeting is on June 13th in these chambers. This meeting stands adjourned.
We're not going to this